All right, greetings and welcome, my friend, to the next episode here, the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A here on the Red Delta Project YouTube channel. I'm your humble host, Matt Schifferly, with another episode to help you be fit and live free by observing the fundamental nature of how fitness actually works. Today, we are discussing a new topic on breaking muscle building plateaus. A new strategy that we're implementing with my Beautiful Strength program and double tap training, if you've been practicing that, where you're basically getting 2 whole work sets per exercise. Very direct, very efficient, and very effective way to stimulate muscle growth. And what we're doing today is implementing a little bit of an isometric finisher in a smart way to help you create a stronger stimulus for that hypertrophy. Because as I cover in Beautiful Strength, the idea behind the program is to help you look and feel more attractive through using exercise. And building muscle is a big component of that, of course, coupled with potential fat loss as well. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that we create a strong stimulus for that to happen. And as far as we understand, it's a little still bit of a mystery on exactly how to do that when it comes to fitness and exercise and what contributes to that. But the evidence strongly supports the idea that it comes from challenging your muscular work capacity, pushing your muscles to a high degree of fatigue, in practical terms, really pushing them close to failure, or just really into what I like to call that proverbial red zone, just making them really feel like, I cannot give her any more power, Captain. And yet your nervous system is still saying, more power, Scotty. And so that triggers the stimulus for your muscles to say, okay, I need to be bigger in order to handle this increase in demand. Now, the idea with Beautiful Strength, and particularly double tap training, is to do that in a more efficient manner. Because a lot of times the challenge that we face is that we push hard and we work hard in the gym, but are we working hard in the right way? We don't want to make the mistake of thinking that just because something is hard, that it's effective, because it's really easy, dare I say, even lazy, to just make training hard. In many ways, you can almost take that as a bit of an amateur way to look at those in the gym if they're just going in there destroying themselves. Or, worst case yet, an amateur personal trainer or a fitness coach where they're like, I'm just going to drive you into the ground and exhaust you and make you, sweat and exhausted all the time. You're not going to get what you want just because you wear yourself out and burn yourself out. In fact, anything that can often slow you down. Instead, creating the stimulus for hypertrophy comes from challenging the capacity of the muscle tissue itself, pushing our muscles to the point where they're having trouble keeping up with the demand of what we're doing. And there's lots of strategies out there that can help you push that to a higher level. One of which is probably the simplest and easiest thing to do is to have a bit of an isometric finisher on your last set of an exercise. Now, if you haven't read the book, or if you haven't caught up on the program, each exercise is done for 2 sets, double tap training, as I call it. Because if we have too much volume, it's easy to pace yourself, and then you just run yourself into exhaustion through other means. Because you can always wear yourself out with enough volume, but we're not trying to just wear ourselves out. We're trying to challenge and wear out the muscle tissue itself, which usually is done with a bit more focus, and that's what the double tap training or 2 sets is about. So it works like this. With double tap training, of course, you're pushing each set as close to failure as you can get, or just doing it until you're struggling to continue doing more repetitions at a quality level. But the thing with challenging your work capacity is that no matter how hard you work, there's always more you can do. You can always do more sets. You can always do more exercises. You can always do more. And when your goal is to say, I want to work as much as possible and wear myself out as much as possible, more work is always the answer. But that's not what gets you success. It's not more work, it's more focused work. It's more productive work. I can wear out your legs just telling you to walk around a jogging track for the next 24 hours. I promise it's going to wear out your legs just fine. Is it going to be conducive for building muscle? Not really. So what we want to do is we want to challenge ourselves within that 2 sets. We're really pushing close to failure. But like I said, you can always do a little bit more. And this is where sometimes insecurity can rear its ugly head. and think, well, shouldn't I be doing more? How do I know if I'm getting the job done? How do I know if I should be doing more? And this is when people are like, they question the double tap method in Beautiful Strength. And they're like, what if I do more and more and more and more and more? But the fact is, there's no finish line when hard work is the goal. When your goal is to just endlessly work harder, you just drive yourself into the ground, because it's like trying to chase the horizon line. It's always moving away from you. You can always do more. So the whole point of the double tap training is to challenge your work capacity within a short period of time to the point where the muscles are getting worked hard, and calling it there. Now, it's never about, are you creating a stimulus or are you not creating a stimulus? It's always about, how much of a stimulus are you creating relative to your cost? Yeah, sure, you can argue that doing much more is going to create a stronger stimulus for hypertrophy. And there's times and places that may be good, but it doesn't matter if it's effective. The human subconscious doesn't care what's effective. It cares about what's worthwhile. If you're getting the best, awesomest, most wonderful, incredible, optimized, maximized results in the world, it doesn't care. Your motivation is still going to crater, and your habits with it, if you're putting in so much work that your subconscious is saying it's not worth it. And that's what matters more than anything in health and fitness. It's not about getting success, it's about getting worthwhile success. So double tap training is not about what's the best results, it's the most results with the least amount of work, because that's ultimately what does matter most for most individuals. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to build as much muscle. It just means you're going to build it a little bit slower over time, which honestly, it's not going to be that much slower anyway. Anyway, so I digress. So basically what we're doing those two sets is just really turning the screws to the muscle, getting 2 good hard work sets, and then you're done. But we can add a little bit of an isometric to it to really push things to a higher level. And this is where things get, again, more efficient, where you can get better and really give yourself a stronger stimulus, but it's barely going to take any extra work at all. And that's what makes it more worthwhile. And so here's how it works. You're going to do your first set in double tap training. Let's say you're doing pull-ups, this is a classic example. And you go and you get, pretty darn close to failure. Really grinding out those last 2 reps. Okay, great, good. That's your first set, just like normal, how you always do it with double tap training. And so you rest as needed. There's no consistent amount of rest that's always going to be best. So rest long enough so that you can put a really good amount of effort into your second set. And then when you're ready to go, you go after your second set. Now, if you really pushed close to your muscular work capacity in your first set, you're not going to be able to get the same number of reps on the second one. You're just not going to have it unless you're doing a backfilling strategy, in which case you're not pushing quite that hard. So let's say you get 8 reps on that second one. Good, awesome, great. But on that 8th repetition, instead of just saying 7 and 8, boom, and then dropping down, now what you're going to do is you're going to pull up 7 and 8 and you hold. You hold whatever point in the pull-up offers the most resistance. Usually that's about halfway up and down. And you just squeeze and you hold the mother living hell out of those muscles for about 10 to 15 seconds. You can just count to yourself or count to several breaths. Sometimes when people are holding isometric, I'll tell them count 10 breaths or whatever. And what that's doing is it's really pushing the muscular work capacity to a higher level than what you had beyond your dynamic training. Because just because you, quote, reach failure doesn't mean that you've completely reached the limits of your muscles. You can always do more. There's always more energy in the muscle. It's just you don't have enough energy to keep doing the exercise that way. That's what reaching muscular failure is actually about, is you no longer have the ability to produce that much muscle tension under those conditions. But the isometric doesn't require quite as much as much tension as the dynamic, just due to simple physics. You need more muscle tension in order to perform the concentric phase of an exercise when you're lifting up than you do on the eccentric, which is when you lower yourself down, and the isometric is kind of somewhere in between. So by adding that isometric finisher, what you're doing is you're working on several things. The first of which is obviously you're just potentially challenging your muscular work capacity to a higher degree even still. So there is a high chance that you are creating a stronger stimulus for hypertrophy, even without extra reps and sets. So you're already getting more bang for your buck there. Congratulations. The second thing that you can do is that you can potentially work your muscles to a much higher degree without a lot more risk in exhaustion, fatigue, burnout, and injury. Because that isometric is a relatively gentle thing for your body to do while still just draining your muscles. So it's, again, a big benefit, very low cost. And then the third benefit, and this is a big part of it for long-term progress, is that it allows you to practice your tension control technique and positioning without really pushing yourself with a lot more extra needed preparatory practice. So if I'm doing a pull-up and I'm holding that isometric, I can hold that and say, okay, wait, are my lats really on as much as I want? Are my shoulders back? Are my shoulders depressed? Is my body position right? Are my legs kicking out? All of these things that we perpetually want to do the exercise better so that we get better results can be worked on and improved upon to a very high degree with that isometric finisher. Now, the reason why you do it only on the last set of the two is because it is going to fatigue the muscles to a very high degree. So if you did it on the first one, which is fine to do it, it's just know that you're not going to have much left over for the second set. So if you're ever in a real hurry and you're like, I only got one set to do, well, then put it at the end of that one set. Just know that your muscles are going to be significantly fatigued from that, which is kind of the point. And then you can move on to a different muscle group or tension chain that you're working, or you can do a different pull chain exercise like the single arm rows that we'd have in Beautiful Strength and push it to a higher level even still. So that's a simple strategy. You do first set, normal, second set, get as much as you can. And then at the end of that, you just hold the hardest position for about 10 to 15 seconds or whatever you can potentially hold. That's all there is to it. Very simple, but small cost, high potential reward. And that's all what Red Delta Project is all about. And of course, Beautiful Strength is how do you get the most from the least? How do you make it as efficient as possible so you get the best bang for your buck? And a simple isometric finisher at the end of your final set can really level up how much you're getting out of your workout with literally just adding 15 seconds of extra work. A couple of things to keep in mind, though, is do make sure that you're not worming and squirming around with the exercise in order to just hold it. You want to make sure that your technique is on point. Do keep breathing when you're doing that exercise. You don't want to be holding your breath and stuff. That just spikes up blood pressure. And at the end of the set, too, you don't want to be feeling all dizzy and stuff. And at the end of that isometric, make sure you always come down and recover under control. You don't just be like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, okay, and then you just drop and you just a couple laps on yourself, and you're like, oh, it's like the obnoxious examples in the gym where someone's doing like cable push downs on the full weight stack there, and on the last one they're like, I'm done, and then just bang, and the weight stack slams down and everything, and annoys everybody within an earshot radius. It's like you're just turning things off. You're just being annoying to everyone around you, but it's also more of a risk factor because, especially in some cases like pull-ups, handstands, things like that, like how are you landing? I the number of times I've seen people hurt their ankles just dropping from pull-up bars, and they're halfway down and they're like, wait a minute, where are my feet? Well, my feet aren't underneath. Oh shoot. And then they landed funny on an ankle, or they're just doing pull-ups on a natural surface and they didn't see that there's a little bit of bumps in the grass or something like that. Always finish the isometric under control for the sake of safety, but also it gives you just a little bit more in that exercise as well. So give it a try. It's one of those things that's so simple and easy to do that sometimes it's easy to forget about it. You do an exercise, a couple of hard sets, and you do in the next one, and then you think, oh, right, shoot, isometric finisher, right, I forgot. I've been doing this for a while now, and even I forget it some of the times just because you get in your own head about it. But you don't need to do it all the time. I'm not saying like this is the best way. You should always do an isometric finisher on your last set. I'm just saying it's a very helpful way to make sure that you're challenging your muscular work capacity to get what you want out of your workouts. It's simple, it's efficient, it doesn't really require any extra exercises or equipment or anything. You just hold, burn out the muscle, come down under control, and you're done. It's a real quick and easy way to level things up. Give it a shot in your workouts this week and let me know at the DMs on the Red Delta Project Instagram channel if you have questions on it and how you are finding it. And speaking of Instagram, let's get to some of the questions here that we've gotten over the past week. And I'll also, as always, entertain your questions here live on the podcast as well. But catching up on one of the old questions that came out a while ago, and just now getting to it here, is from my man Case, who I just ran into on mountain biking the other day when he was out and we ran into each other. Thank you very much for saying hi, Case. But anyway, he left this question saying, like, I'm stuck on high volume training. I've dug myself into the corner because now whenever I don't hit a certain number, I feel like I'm falling back or regressing. Any advice? And this is a classic example of what happens when we base our success and progression off of a single metric, my friends. You can take this lesson to everything in life: fat loss, performance, your workouts and strength and conditioning as well. Because when you hyperfixate on one metric, in this case, how many reps are you getting, then you only give yourself one avenue for progress. I made this mistake years ago when I started to do, just as a cardio supplement, I did a little running path through my neighborhood that I lived in at the time. And at first it was great because the first time I just kind of jogged through, I kind of ran through and did it in like 20 minutes. And then the next time I got in like 19 minutes and then 18 and 17. I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm making progress. And that time kept coming down and down and down and down. But eventually I hit my personal best was 15 minutes and 3 seconds. And it did not matter how hard I pushed. It didn't matter what, there was nothing I could do. I could not break that 15-minute barrier. And so this is what inevitably happens when you have one metric of progress. You're going to hit a wall and you just can't go any further. Or the amount of cost to go further is so high, you're not willing to go any further, which is the same thing. And this is the same approach to everything. If diet, I'm just cutting back on sugar. Eventually, you're just going to hit a point where you just can't cut back on sugar anymore, or cutting back on carbs, or cutting back on processed foods. No matter what your strategy is, if you're banking on one solitary metric for progress, you're going to hit a wall. And that wall is probably long before you get the results you actually want. And then you're stuck pushing as hard as you possibly can, working your tail off just to stay where you are, which is it's like working a dead end job. Dude, I'm working 15-hour days and I'm still broke. And it's like, well, now you're stuck working 15-hour days in a job you hate and you're going to stay broke. So how do you get out of this? You have a focus on other metrics. And so I don't know what you're looking for here, Case. I'm assuming muscle and strength, right? But what you want to do is you always want your objective to be your goal, not that metric. So in the case of I want to get stronger, I'm like, good, you need more tension in the muscle. To hell with the reps. So use harder exercises and push the intensity as far as the muscle tension. I want to build muscle. Okay, we got to challenge our work capacity. Can you do that with high volume? Yeah, but you don't need to. You can absolutely do it. In fact, you're probably going to have an easier time without the higher volume. Because when you fixate on a single goal, you let other areas of progression reduce or degrade in compensation. Economics, I was going to say professors, but people who study human economics know this. The old example is the nail factory, where the foreman was like, okay, everybody, you get bonuses if you can turn out more nails. So everybody started in their nail production doubled overnight. And he was like, this is great. But then he saw the nails and they were all bent and they were all like lopsided and they were poor quality and some of them didn't have points. And he's like, what the hell? And he's like, well, you said more nails. You didn't say they had to be good nails. And that's exactly what often happens with high volume training, especially, is that people are like, I'm going to do high volume push-ups. And then you see what they're doing 2 months later and their push-ups are terrible. Their range of motion is like 3 inches, they're just bobbing their head. Elbows are really winging out and everything. It's like, what's going on? It's like, well, you are doing high volume, high repetitions, but it's not going to help you get what you actually want out of your training. So the bottom line, Case, is say, okay, you got, 30 push-ups at a time, let's say. Great. All right. Use that as a bit of a general benchmark, but don't feel like you got to do 30 push-ups. If you're like, I want to get stronger, I'm like, okay, we're going to go cross or close hand. We're going to get your shoulders down and back. You're going to keep your body nice and tight. We're going to make the push-up harder. And that's going to be more effective for building strength and probably muscle in this case as well. And people always do the same thing. They're like, oh man, if I do push-ups that way, I can't get nearly as many reps. Damn straight. That's a good thing. Good. Good. If you were in the gym and you were like lifting an empty barbell for 50 repetitions and someone's like, you can add weight, right? I'm like, nah, if I added weight, then I couldn't do as many reps. And that's great if the goal is actually to do a lot of reps, but very rarely do people actually have that as a goal. They just assume that doing high reps are going to give them the actual results they want, muscle strength, looking more attractive, whatever, right? So this is why you want to stay fixated on what exactly do you want and what is your fundamental objective in the gym, and then let the reps and the weight and the sets and the technique and everything fall wherever it may in order to reach that objective. Because you're not going to build muscle and strength by doing high reps, nor low reps, nor slow reps, nor with weights, nor with those are just the vehicles. That's the ideology you're following. No ideology will get you the success you want. It's about achieving your fundamental objectives. So I would say, look to make the push-ups harder. Just make them harder. Close, tight, strict technique, full range of motion, maybe add a weight vest or a bands or something like that. Make them harder, and that's probably going to give you a new direction to go into. And while it feels like, but I'm doing something totally different, you're not. You're still going after your fundamental objective and probably achieving it to a higher degree. So you're going to get better results, even though it's not high volume or follow whatever sort of approach that is. So Babu Jui asking an experience with Exergenie. Boy, that rings a bell, but I don't know what that is. Isoaerobic type of muscle exit. Any new reviews of equipment? No, I don't know too much, but I will give you a couple of things. A lot of times when new things come out, the more technological these things are, the more they tend to get in the way of actual progress, in my experience. I've done lots of machines and things like that, some reviews here on the channel. They're really technologically advanced, different apps and smart scales and things like that. And it's really cool and it can be helpful, again, to give you different metrics and things to go after. But my general experience just over the past 5 or 6 years especially has been that the more we involve technology in fitness, the more it holds us back. The less we need, if the best you can go, the less batteries and circuits and electronics you need, the better. Because ultimately, everything in fitness is about how well do you use your body. Full stop. It's never about the tools you use. It's not about the equipment you use. It's not about technology or anything like that. The only way technology helps you get better results is if it helps you use your body better. And a lot of times, again, our focus goes from I'm using my body to I'm using these tools. And that's when we get distracted and pulled off of what we actually want. In my world of skiing and bike racing, and I've even noticed that with like using computers and stuff like that, the best stuff that's designed, the best design stuff is stuff you don't even know you're using half the time, that you don't have to put any thought into whatsoever. When I got my Sony camera here that I'm recording on years ago, it spent like a week and a half learning about it and trying to customize, because that's the thing with photography equipment. It's all about customization and stuff. And eventually I got to the point where it's literally turn on, go. I don't even take off a lens cap anymore or anything like that. I literally set up everything so everything runs without me hardly even needing to do anything or think about it. We want the same thing to be happening when it comes to diet and exercise. We want our workouts and our exercise and our diet habits to be so natural and unencumbered that we want to be able to do it with hardly ever thinking about it. The less work you need to do in fitness, the better. So I'm just ranting about how technology just often makes things more complicated, more expensive, and more tedious than it needs to be. And that stuff holds you back. take that advice for whatever it may be for these things that you're mentioning, because I've never heard of any of this stuff. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not useful. But typically, technology just gets in the way. I can get a better workout with nothing more than a pull-up bar than most people do with the latest technology, including AI, because I can use my body better than they can use their technology. And that's why you get better results. Omar, it's good to talk to you. Saying, do you have experience? Oops, sorry, my bad. Do you have experience high reps of weights make your legs big? I don't want big legs because I do calisthenics skills and martial arts and stuff. Well, the big legs can certainly help with those things. Big legs gets a stigma, generally with things like calisthenics competition. Extra weight can hold you back. It's just like me in the bike racing world when I was in college. You don't want an ounce of upper body muscle if you can get away with it, because weight slows you down. But generally, martial arts, general strength with calisthenics and stuff, the big legs aren't going to hold you back. They're going to be an asset, if anything. So that's good. But no, you're not going to build muscle because of any particular method that you use. When we're looking at like, okay, does high reps build muscle or not, or high weight? No, that's not why you get results. You get results because you achieve the fundamental objectives. If you use high reps, lightweight, to challenge your work capacity, yes, you will build bigger muscles in your legs. If you use low reps, high weight, to challenge your work capacity, you're still going to build bigger muscles. The evidence and the research is very clear on this. Whatever method you use, whatever tools you use, whatever diet you use, the results come from the objectives that you meet. And if you still meet that objective with two different methods, they're going to work the same. And this is why we have to understand our fundamental objectives, because no, your results don't come from your diet and exercise habits. They come from how well your diet and exercise habits help you achieve or avoid those fundamental objectives. So if you're looking to avoid the stimulus for hypertrophy, then stay well short of failure. Just work the muscles and make sure that you're not pushing the muscles to a super high degree of fatigue. And that will hedge your bets away from building bigger leg muscles. And you can do it however you like in that regard. That's what fundamental approach does. It gives you freedom. It gives you freedom to do whatever the hell you want, however you want to do it, but also a much more direct line to get the results that you want or avoid the ones that you don't. Super Chiquita, it's good to see you again. Been a few weeks since I've seen you pop on up. When is the 10 tips for log your workout coming out? Greetings from Chile. Let me know more on that one. Is that something that I mentioned back before? Boy, I'm trying to remember. I think I already did. You can search for it on the YouTube channel or on the blog, reddeltaproject.com. But maybe that's something I meant to do earlier and I did not. If so, that was like a year ago or so. But let me ruminate on that. But I think it's already out there, sir. Adam asking again, or Adam coming back again, saying, view on mouth taping for sleep. You know, it reminds me back in the day when everybody was sleeping with these nose strips and everything like that. And there's always like trends and fads and stuff. And generally, I never have any opinion one way or another with these sorts of things. I think it was probably started by wives and girlfriends who are just sick of their husbands snoring. Of course, you can certainly snore without opening your mouth as well. I have the tendency to snore every once in a while myself. So I think that probably is like, oh, you got to try this mouth taping thing. It's great and stuff. And just to get their husband to tape their mouth shut so they don't snore at night and has no actual benefits. So damned if I know. So it's always down to the classic idea of give it a shot and see what happens. But if I had to guess, and I am certainly guessing, I would say it's a fad. It probably does nothing at all. It's kind of like a lot of the breathing ideas out there. When we follow an ideology, we lose sight of the actual things that are helpful. And so generally when it comes to I need to sleep better, we need to look at the bigger picture stuff. on why we're not sleeping very well. And usually little tips and tricks are too small of an influence to really matter. So I'm guessing it probably doesn't really do much of anything other than just is a pain in the neck. Um, and it's probably going to get regulated to one of those ideas of like, oh man, can you believe we actually tried that? We actually thought that did anything. But who am I to say? Give it a try. If it changes your life, then great. But I'm not going to put any bet on it. I love my life. It's good. Good. I love your life. Is it okay to do dead hangs daily? Sure, of course. Although always listen to your body. You know, we all have a finite ability to handle stress in the body, and sooner or later things just break on you. And you can run into a 90-year-old person who's like, I've dead hanged every day of my life for the past 80 years and I'm fine. Yeah, and there could also be someone out there who did it for a week and blew out their shoulder. Yeah, it's always person specific kind of thing. Case in point, I started a regimen about a month ago where I was doing slow, easy side kicks to improve the musculature and the strength and mobility in my hips, because my hips have always been chronically weak and incredibly tight. Like it's really hard for me to kick above my waist many days. Stretching hasn't ever helped me one iota, and mobility work has completely been worthless for me. So I'm looking at, okay, maybe if I do some strength training stuff, that'll help. And it helped a tiny itty bitty little bit of a smidgen at first, but then it, of course, didn't benefit me much more. So I started pushing harder and I started doing it more aggressively. And it was great. It was fine. It was like, yeah, it was fine. It was okay. No big deal. I'm just, fine, And then one day I woke up and I couldn't move my right leg. I'm like, what the hell? And it was like 2 or 3 weeks and I couldn't bend over. I couldn't kick above my knee height. I couldn't kick at all. I had trouble climbing stairs. And it's just my joints and my muscles and everything. It just reached a breaking point and my system went AWOL on me. I'm not saying it's going to happen if you do dead hangs. I'm just saying that when we have an idea in our head of, oh, this is great, I'm going to force myself to do it every day, we run the more risk of overloading ourselves. Because again, you're not trying to get successful, you're just following an ideology. So I learned that's a great exercise. I just can't do it every day because my body isn't in shape enough to handle the stress until it breaks. And usually when it comes to dead hangs and things like that, we're putting a good stretch on our system, but we're also putting stress and strain on our system. And so maybe I would say try it 4 or 5 days of the week and then give yourself rest. When in doubt, more rest is the idea. I know that's not the rhetoric we like to hear in our no pain, no gain kind of attitudes these days. And then it's like, okay, hang every day. Okay, now hang twice a day. Okay, now hang as long as possible. Okay, now hang and have someone pull on your legs. I mean, eventually, if you just keep amping this up, it gets rough. But I am a big fan of hanging on a regular basis for the sake of stretching and just decompressing the spine. And literally like hang for like 10 seconds, and that's all you really need. So just a cautionary tale there, but otherwise, yeah, go for it. Can be very therapeutic for you. We all should be hanging to a high degree. Chris, no, asking again, isokinetic. Boy, that's again on the back of my mind. I can't remember what that is, although I'm sure if I looked it up, I'd be like, oh, that thing, right? Yeah. So the bottom line is, no, I've never used it. So your opinion is more valid than mine. Otherwise, I have no idea. But let us know what you think about it here in the comment section. We'd love to hear from your experience. Should we work towards pistol squats for leg mass, or is it okay to just to do high rep heel elevated bodyweight squats? Jacob coming in asking. Very good question. When we are in the world of fitness, and especially with calisthenics, you're eventually going to run into some exercises that just aren't really in your wheelhouse. Okay, pistol squats can be an example. Like for me, right? I've tried pistol squatting to some degree for years and years and years, and I never could get the really proficient or the hang of them, largely because, like I mentioned earlier, my hips are chronically weak, they're chronically stiff, and they're chronically immobile. And I can certainly improve it, but it's probably going to be decades. If I'm honest, I'm probably never going to have good hips that are good enough that are going to make the pistol squat a really viable exercise for me. So that's why I do a lot of lunges. I do a lot of hover lunges, step ups, things that are much more in wheelhouse of alignment for my abilities. And it's the same thing with you too. Like sometimes when people are like, do I have to do this exercise? That usually tells me that that exercise just isn't a good fit for that person. Because all exercise, but especially calisthenics exercises like the pistol squat, require more than just strength, and they require multiple qualities of fitness. And we all have the ability to adapt. We all have the ability to get better at everything, but some things are just not going to be within reach. There are just some aspects of health and fitness that are just not in your wheelhouse. And this is why we need to have a compassionate mind to those who struggle to achieve something. Just listening to a podcast the other day about body image and body fat loss and things like that. And we need to be compassionate, because some people, they're like, it's really hard for me to lose body fat. It's just, I'm never going to be skinny. And people like me who are just ignorant of the fact of it's hard to have had a much easier time staying lean, staying lean throughout life, are like, oh, come on, don't be so lazy. Okay, because we're only looking at it from our own perspective. But we all have that thing that's just always going to be a bear. That's just always, you're going to have to work 10 times harder for 10% of the results compared to other people. And there's just no two ways about it. It's not fair. Life isn't fair. Fitness isn't fair. And so, with some exercises, you're like, the mobility, the stability, the whatever, it's just not happening. It's like, yeah, do something else. Don't force it. Use something else that is more in alignment with you. So in your case, you're talking about high rep squats. Okay, great. Yeah, that's good. But if you're still wanting to get strength out of it, you still want heavy resistance. You still want something that's going to challenge your muscles with low reps, heavy resistance. And the high rep squats ain't going to cut it. So you need to use something else. But luckily in calisthenics, there's tons of options out there. Hell, if you're still married to the pistol squat, we can do banded pistol squats. We can do suspension pistol squats. We can do box pistol squats. Right? So those are ways that we can make the exercise still work and get fantastic results. But now the other things that are potentially limiting you aren't a limitation anymore. So they're not holding you back. Hover lunges have always been a favorite of mine. Step ups, where you've got your other foot on the floor, but only on the heel, so you can't really push off the ground. Those are fantastic. That's wonderful. There are so many leg exercises that you can do in calisthenics beyond pistol squats that there's no sense in forcing yourself to follow any particular exercise. Hamstring curls and sissy squats are fantastic as well. I mean, I know people, they don't even do compound leg exercises beyond jumping. But when it comes to building up their legs, calf raises, hamstring curls or Nordic curls, and sissy squats, and they could build amazing legs doing those sorts of things. We don't need the classic, compound squats if we don't want to. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. Joseph saying, Matt, I use isometrics at the end of my workouts. Yep, I tried the squats, my heel elevated the other day. Yesterday I did 3 sets, Bulgarian split squats for 3 sets, said 2 and on the wall set. Very good. So are you using the isometric as a separate exercise there, Joseph, or are you adding it on like we were talking about earlier, where you're doing the set and then you hold the hard position for a good few seconds? That might be something fun for you to play with as well. Dave 9503 saying, Matt, I usually do bar dips and push-ups, but I don't have anywhere to do elevated hand push-ups at home. So for a finisher, I am lacking that to really finish the muscle off. What can I do? So we got the isometrics that we were talking about. So you just, if you're doing dips, you just go halfway down and you just hold it. Good 20 seconds will really fry you on out. You can also regress to your knee push-ups, of course. You can also regress range of motion. So you do half reps. You can also do single arm stuff on more elevated stuff, because you're like, I don't have anywhere to do elevated push-ups. Of course you do. Everybody does. It's called a wall. You could do stuff on the wall, but just progress the technique in other ways, like single arm push-ups The kitchen counter can work very well for that sort of thing as well. So there's lots of ways that you can progress. And this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where we don't want to get fixated on a single metric or a single way of making progress, because then you're basically limiting your toolbox and saying, this is the only way I can do something. You want to have lots of options. And that's why I cover in my book, Smart Bodyweight Training, the table of progressive elements for calisthenics. I believe there's 9 elements in that you can progress with most any exercise: range of motion, weight shifting from one area to another. So you could do archer push-ups, as a progression there. You could do range of your angle that we're talking about with incline push-ups as well. Leverage, so that would be push-ups on your knees. Speed can be another thing. So you can do your push-ups or your dips, shake it out a little bit, and then just finish off with a couple of really slow push-ups. But you could even be looking at this from the standpoint that they're natural drop sets or finishers in themselves. Dips are harder than push-ups because you're working against your body weight, but they are fundamentally still just push-ups in their own right, using the same muscles, same motion at the joints, just the positioning is different. So a great finisher is you do your dips, and then the push-ups are the finisher. And so if you're looking for drop sets, let's do dips, then you do push-ups, then you do knee push-ups. And usually with drop sets, you only need 2 or 3 levels to drop down on. So that's what I would do if I were you. That's a very fun way to do things when it comes to your finishers and stuff. Gromit, congratulations, my friends. Saying, I have the ISOMAX. It's kind of like He-Man. I have the power. Congrats, man. Great job. Don't forget, I've got a ton of ISOMAX and isometric videos and workouts and stuff in the isometrics playlist here on the YouTube channel. So there's a lot you can do with that. I'm pretty sure I made a video. Yeah, I made a video a few weeks ago on new fun programming ways of using the ISOMAX, because you got the program buttons, you got your max, you got your average, you've got your load, and you got your time modes. And so many people only scratch the surface of what they can do with their ISOMAX because they use it kind of like a classic barbell, which is what it's designed to be for isometrics, which is great. It's awesome. But there's so many cool things you can do with the ISOMAX with those program buttons. So if you go into ISOMAX, I think if you just search ISOMAX or ISOMAX programming or something on the channel, you can find some really cool stuff to do in that video as well. Hope you enjoy it. It's going to be a lot of fun. But Joseph following up saying, I usually do the ISO hold right after my sets and done for 1 minute. Fantastic. Sounds good there, Joseph. Remember what I was saying earlier, though, folks, is that you can always do more work. You can always exhaust yourself more fully. You can always do another set. This is the big thing that people have trouble with double tap training. 2 hard work sets, you're done. And if you really feel like, oh, I want a third, then I say go for it. But if you're really pushing those 2 hard work sets, that third one should have not much to it. So the first set is 10 pull-ups, the second set is like 8 pull-ups, and then the third one is like 4. It's like really hard drop off from it. So at that point, it's like you're not getting much out of it. Because remember, the more work you do, the less benefit you're getting from your training and your diet and exercise habits, but the exponential increase in cost you do have. And again, it's all about cost to weight ratio, cost to benefit ratio. Subconsciously, your motivation and everything is all based on how much benefit you're getting relative to the cost you're putting in. So we usually think of success in fitness as how good are my results, how good my results can potentially be. And yes, if you are trying to get to your absolute maximum ability, then yes, that's all that matters. Damn the cost. And that's what, people often find are worth it. If you're trying to go for, bodybuilding competition, especially to a high level, or you're a very serious athlete, then yes, putting everything on the line to get that success, you'd say, yeah, it's worth it to me. But for the vast majority of people, it's not going to be. And that's why we always don't want to just think, what's the best possible results I can get? because I can tell you the best possible results are going to cost you dearly, very much. I mean, I've never even come close to that, but in my years of being a professional coach, as well as being a collegiate bike racer and stuff, there were certainly times when I was like, I'm just going to put as much as I possibly can into this. And even that wasn't everything I could possibly put into it. And it was not fun. It was not okay. There were definitely times I was like, this is not healthy. I am definitely doing damage to my body. I am hurting myself in many ways, even outside of fitness. My grades were suffering in many cases. I had relationships that suffered. I was constantly broke at several periods of my life because all my money was going towards trying to just make something happen in health and fitness. I'm like, this is what maximization is about. And then I woke up one day, I'm like, what am I doing this for? Like, no one's going to pay me to be a bike racer. Like, I'm never going to be like a cover model. Like, there's no financial return on this. Why am I going broke doing this? No one cares if I have, 2% less body fat. And yet people certainly care that I'm always angry and cranky because I'm killing myself with a super restrictive diet. So it's always about cost to benefit ratio. And Red Delta Project is always about how do you get the best possible results with as little work as possible? Because at the end of the day, there's a hell of a lot more to life than health and fitness and diet and exercise habits. So the less you need to put in to get a good amount out, the better off we are. Excuse me, a drink here. Very dry today. Love My Life is coming back saying, been doing micro workouts multiple times a day with about 1 to 5 reps per session and 4 to 7 times per day doing body weight. Should I add a rest day, even if my workouts are spaced out? So yeah, always remember, it's like the video I just posted here on the YouTube channel. Your body doesn't care what you do on a day-to-day basis. It's always taking the averages of what you're doing over time. So it's like, okay, this is what I did on this day, and this is what I did on that day and stuff. Your body doesn't care. Your body's caring, what did you do throughout the entire week? Or what have you done over the course of a month? I've even known some fitness enthusiasts to say, I don't track anything unless it's on a biannual basis. How many miles did I run in 6 months? How many calories did I burn over a month? They don't care. They're like, yeah, I don't care if my numbers go up or down on a daily basis. Totally irrelevant. Doesn't matter. Because ultimately it really doesn't. If you have your numbers skyrocket or plummet one day, it doesn't matter. It's always the average over time. So that's what you want to think about here. I Love My Life, where you're like doing these micro workouts and stuff, but you want to think of it like, okay, what is the work you're doing over a day? And what you're doing is just a solid workout. It's just spread out. Or are you, would you do a rest day from that? Because spreading it out isn't going to give you any real advantage as far as your actual recovery goes. You're still doing the same amount of work in a 24-hour period. Doesn't matter if it's all at once or spread out. The amount of stress and recovery necessary is going to be roughly the same. So yeah, you may do well with a rest day on that sort of thing. Depends on how much stress and fatigue you have from your micro workouts, though. You never need to recover from exercise. You only need to recover from stress and fatigue. So if your exercise isn't really creating that much stress and fatigue on you, which is dependent on many other factors, sleep, genetics, lifestyle stress, diet, how hard you're pushing towards the limits of your fatigue, like we were saying earlier. If I got down on the floor and did 10 push-ups right now, regular push-ups, and wasn't really fatigued, I could easily do that every day for years and it's fine. But if I'm doing a single push chain workout where I'm pushing to my muscular work capacity for 2 hard, good sets, yeah, I'm going to need to recover from that. That's going to need some, because it just creates more stress and damage. So the more stress you have, the more you need to recover. And like I was saying earlier, sometimes that stuff can sneak up on you. Like I was doing with my slow sidekick challenge that I was doing. From one day to the next, it was like, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's always fine. It feels fine. It doesn't feel sore. It doesn't feel tired. Didn't feel like, my muscles are sore. It doesn't feel like, and just one day, I couldn't walk. Yes, I'm not saying that usually happens, but it can happen. So usually when it comes to rest days, sometimes just taking days off is just good practice for the sake of hedging your bets a little bit. Dr. Mike was on a podcast one time and he was talking about this study where they had, what was it? I can't remember exactly the nuances, but they had two groups of individuals. And they had one group that took a week off every like 6 weeks from training, and the other one just trained throughout. And after time, like a year or so, they studied and they were like, okay, so both groups built roughly the same amount of strength and muscle. There really wasn't a difference between the two. So the guy interviewing was like, so does that mean the people who just did the extra work without the days off were basically wasting their time, like working out for no benefit? And Dr. Michael was kind of like, yeah, yeah, you kind of are, you know? And that boils down again to what I was saying earlier, where it's like, yeah, I know you're putting in the work, but you've got to be asking yourself if it's productive. You know, if you could work 5 days a week and make $100, or 4 days a week and make $100. Now, if you're looking at just the outcome, you're like, you make $100 either way. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just do whatever. It doesn't matter. I still made $100 either way. Of course it matters, because one of them you worked for no extra benefit. Work without benefit is a bad thing, my friends. As much as we love in hustle culture, in our fitness culture, to be like work, 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 you know, it's like work is the thing I sustain my frail male ego on and everything. I'm the strongest worker. I can outwork anybody. Hard work is a liability, my friends. Flat out. God, I wish I knew this when I was younger. I would have saved myself so much time and energy, because honestly, seriously, you know, I was always killing myself with hard work, diet, and exercise habits. A lot of times, literally. And I heavily regret most of it. I would say easily 80% of all the work I've ever done in diet and exercise was worthless. At least 80 or 90%. Now, at the time, I'd say, yeah, of course it's working. Of course it's doing things. Like, I'm leaner. I'm fast on the bike. I'm building muscle and stuff. It doesn't matter if it's getting results. It doesn't matter if it works. It matters if it's worthwhile. And if you can get the same results with half the work, that means half your work is worthless. And that is a very bad thing, because you're taking resources out of your life to do that work. And those resources aren't exactly just floating around. I don't know many people are like, oh yeah, I love wasting time and a lot of money. In fact, I just go down the street and I just throw money into the trash bins. You know, I don't care. Yeah, energy, yeah, you know, I like, you know, halfway through the day, I do something purposeful that's just going to make me exhausted the rest of the day, and mentally foggy too. Very irritable as well. I love just wasting time and energy for no benefit whatsoever. At least with something stupid like doom scrolling or something, you're getting entertainment out of it. But that's the attitude we need to have in life and lifting, is that we need to be diligent auditors of our work and effort. I don't care if it works, because you don't care if it works. Your subconscious is based on worthwhile habits, not productive habits. And so we want to be always on the hunt for what is the work that we're doing that isn't necessary, that isn't productive. Because in many ways we do that instinctually anyway. Human beings are going to avoid work that they don't feel is worthwhile. But if we don't know what our fundamental objectives are, what we're actually trying to accomplish in the gym with our workouts and diet and exercise habits, we have no basis upon which we can judge which habits or which amount of work, what work is worthwhile. So that's why we just work ourselves to death, throwing stuff at a wall and just hoping something sticks. And that's why the majority of people who fail at anything in life, but especially with health and fitness, are doing so because they're just working way too hard, because they don't know what objectives they're trying to hit. And most of the work they're doing isn't productive. It's not worthwhile. And they're stressing out body, mind, and lifestyle because they're draining themselves of their resources. That is completely unnecessary. That's the real stinker of it. That's why I have so much regret over everything that I used to do when it comes to diet and exercise habits, is that I look back and I'm like, oh, not only was it not really effective, not only was it was just so I didn't need to do it. I didn't need to. Oh, there was a time in college where I struggled to pass an anthropology class in college. I mean, I was struggling to pass this thing. It was so hard, and I was losing sleep, and every day it was a mental battle to study for this thing, and I hated this class. But I got through it, and I think I got like a B in it or something. I was like, oh, thank God. And I was like, yay, me and everything. And then when I was meeting my academic advisor, like later the next semester, they're like, what'd you take this anthropology class for? An elective? I'm like, no, I needed to do it for a, humanities credit or whatever. And he's like, no, but you got your humanities credit from this other class you took. You didn't need to take that. And I was like, "Ah." Like, it was like, yeah, but you learned and you opened your mind to the Yanomamo tribes. And I'm like, I really wish I knew that. Because if I had the option, they were like, yeah, you don't need this class. I'd be like, great, good, I'm dropping it. And would I have been better off? Absolutely. 100%. Definitely. Because wasted work is not a good thing, my friends. And that's what I'm just trying to give you is that so much work out there when it comes to health and fitness is completely unnecessary. So you should only engage in these things if you actually want to do it, if you have a vested interest in doing it for yourself, so it's worthwhile for you. And there's lots of things I do that don't really move the needle a whole lot in my fitness realm. Like, I'm a martial artist, I'm a taekwondoist. Last Monday, I went to class and the instructor basically lectured at us for an hour and a half. We barely got any exercise at all during the entire class. I think I threw a total of maybe 30 kicks, right? And barely did anything. Now, if back in the day when I was starting off in getting serious about martial arts, that was my only form of exercise. So I'm like, I need to do this to burn calories. I need to do this to keep myself lean. I need to do this to be strong. Now I do other things that are so much more effective for that. So I was like, yeah, okay. You want to lecture us a whole bunch about side kicks? Whatever. That's fine by me. It's not something that I need to do. And therefore it was still worthwhile because I'm not going to martial arts to stay strong. That's what my pull-ups are for. So it's always about what's worthwhile. What's the biggest bang for the buck that we can get? And that's what the delta represents, my friends. A triangle is the strongest and most efficient shape that we have in engineering. Anytime you look at a project where they're like, we need a lot of strength, but we also need to save on weight and cost, usually triangles are a heavily implemented ingredient in that. Bridge structures, bicycle frames, aircraft structures, anywhere they're like, we need a lot from a little, that's where triangles and deltas come into the picture, because that's what gives us the best chances of our success. Because at the end of the day, your ability to get what you want isn't about what's most effective. It's about what's worthwhile, and that puts the odds in your favor. Because I get questions all the time from folks saying, like, what do I think of, do you think you can build muscle with this type of diet? Or do I think I can be strong if I do this and that? And the answer is, I think it's possible. But the real question is it probable? What are the chances you're going to do it? Can you be a millionaire playing the lottery? Technically, yes, it is possible. But is it probable? What's the easiest way? What gives you the best chance of your success? And that's probably where you're going to find the most worthwhile habits. Don't bet on the long shots. I read somewhere years ago that a lot of folks who are successful in business and finance and things like that, they're not betting the farm a lot of times. We hear of their long shot bets. They bet the whole company on this thing and it had to work. It's like, usually that's not the way it works. Usually they're like, what gives us the best chances of this investment paying off? What are the best chances of this thing working out for me? And even with that attitude, most of it doesn't. But the stuff that does hits very well and it makes it all worthwhile. So we want to have that attitude of, yeah, okay, can you get big and jacked lifting a 5-pound dumbbell like Eugene Sandoz and stuff? Sure. But from what we know about anecdotal evidence and scientific evidence and stuff, the odds aren't that good for it. You're probably going to have a better chance of building muscle and strength with a heavier weight. So it's not about, is it effective or can I do it? It's, what are the chances, though, you can do it? This is a bit of a know thyself kind of idea too. If like I know my hips, they're not going to be mobile and strong for pistol squats, regular pistol squats. So I am not doing a whole lot of forcing pistol squats in my programs these days. Same with back bridges. I do a lot of hip bridges and stuff like that because I just know myself. I know I'm just not going to be that successful with that exercise. Doesn't mean it's a bad exercise. Doesn't mean it's ineffective. I just know it's not the thing that's going to give me the best odds. So you can have all the experts in the world telling me how pistol squats are the best exercise for building muscle and strength and best calisthenics, king of leg exercise. Doesn't matter at all because I know I'm not going to have the best chances of it. And that's the thing I'm going to base my decisions off of. So there's a lot to unpack in today's episode, folks. I got pretty philosophical and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, that is the thing that matters in fitness. Your attitude and your beliefs and your perceptions are what control our lives. And unless that changes, we're just going to keep going around on the same merry-go-round over and over again, not really going anywhere. Nothing changes until we change our beliefs and our perceptions of how things work and how we feel about something. Once it does, changes happen real fast. And I create this episode, these podcasts, to hopefully give you just things that have helped me in life. But I don't want you to take it wholeheartedly. I want you to think about it, ruminate it, reject what doesn't work for you, implement adding things that do, and keep what works for you. You could have something that I say and it's like, oh, this is working great for me. 2 years down the road, it's like, it's not working so good for me anymore. Okay, get rid of it. Doesn't matter if it's the best thing ever. Doesn't matter. It's what's best for you. That's the thing that matters most. All right, I'm starting to go on my own little mental loops here and everything. Don't forget, folks, that this episode is sponsored by my new Beautiful Strength program, using calisthenics to look and feel your best. PDF is down below. It's also available on Amazon, paperback, and Kindle. Also, I forgot to mention, new RDP merch is dropping at the RDP merch store. I've got a link down below for that too. I really like these new shirts. I got the new logo and everything, the new simpler RDP logos. Grind Style Calisthenics gear. I got the new shirts of Old School Calisthenics by Paul Wade. Is also the t-shirts over there at the merch store as well. Lots of new colors and stuff. Really happy with that stuff. Can't wait to get my stuff in. So that's the stuff that keeps this show running and on the air. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming on with your questions. And I will talk to you folks next week. Till then, be fit and live free.